As Russia presses into Ukraine, and there are reports some Russian forces are approaching the capital of Kyiv, I am joined by a resident of Kyiv, somebody who's asked us to use only his first name and blur his face for his own security and the security of his family. Sergey, thank you so much for your time today and for your willingness to share what you're experiencing.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for having me.
First of all, how are you right now?
I'm under a bit of stress, as we all are, obviously. A bit anxious, of course, but we have great trust in the armed forces of our country. It's been better.
You sound tough and ready for hard times ahead, but I also hear the stress in your voice. Can you tell us a little bit about where you are? Don't give us your location, but sort of how have you been keeping yourself safe?
I'm in Kiev, in the capital. I'm on closer to the center of the city, a bit away from the directions that the aggressor is coming from. I have been with my family here at my home, as I deem it to be a rather safe place to be under all the circumstance. There are multiple sirens around the city whenever there's an attack approaching that officials regard as an attack. So it's been hard not to relocate to a safe place, to a bomb safety, room or whatever it's called, and the subway stations. But I feel that me being in my home, there's nothing of armed forces presence around. So I feel it's pretty safe to be just in a home, in an apartment.
For now. Do you have children? Are you with children?
Yeah, I do. And this does put an extra level of anxiety and stress, of course, in all the situation.
They must be asking questions. What do you tell them?
One is a bit older, one is a bit younger. The one that's older, he was, understanding all the situation for years now, that we have an aggressor on the border that is despicable, that is a definite villain, and that will never sleep calmly until all the Ukraine is gone. And that we are on our soil, we are a sovereign country, and we're very proud to be Ukrainians. So this is something that he was born with, this is something he was raised with, and this is something he is very proud of. So for example, just a couple of days ago, he urged everyone to speak Ukrainian everywhere. So for everybody that knows him, everybody that communicates with us, to urge to speak Ukrainian, because this is just a sign that we are proud to be here and we're here to stay. Right? So this is our soul. We're never going to give it up. And this is what he has been growing with. He knows that Russia is he knows that we will only be safe once Russia is without its teeth and is on its knees. It's very hard to keep your sanity under the circumstances, under the information that's coming in, that there are attacks on the city, that there are sirens, that there are rocket bombings actually inside of Ukraine and close to the center of Kiev. So we have friends that are just constantly living under a constant threat inside of a metro station.
Metro station, a subway. Yeah.
Yes. This is where they're told to go if there is a threat of bombing. So they just went there. They also have kids and they have been just there. So other friends are trying to move away from the city. But given that a lot of people are panicking, a lot of people are under threat, a lot of roads are blocked, and it's very hard to move through and out of the city. Plus, there are Russian troops coming from different places. So it's a bit tricky.
Are people going to work? Are grocery stores open? What's it like when you go outside?
It's very quiet. It's incredibly quiet. I don't believe I've seen anything quiet like this and dark like this in terms of the windows ever. And I've been here for the entirety of my life. The grocery stores are open. Everything else is closed. All the hospitals are only accepting some major issues. Everything you could think of is closed. There is I forgot how to call it. There are hours where you're not supposed to go outside. So curfew, right?
Curfew.
Yeah. So like is beginning in about 10 p.m. So then nothing is working like at all. But during the day, the groceries are pretty much the only thing that's open.
Do you feel in any way abandoned by the West? Do you think that these countries not only, as you said, you'd like them to come in, but do you think it was an obligation for these Western countries to be there to protect you?
We do feel that West could and must do much more. They could and they must have done much more previously when this all started. Crimea could never, that case of Crimea being occupied and next could never be left unpunished, which it actually was. Those sanctions on Russia, they, as we all can see, they didn't stop them. They didn't stop Russia. We need hellish sanctions. We need to disable Russia from SWIFT. We need armed forces support. We need the West to do more. We are a country that is very young, that is just at the beginning, of earning its not freedom. Freedom has been earned, and we've done a lot to keep this freedom. But economically wise, we need help, and we need help to fight off the so-called neighbor, is really not the best word to use here, but the aggressor on the West, and we need support.
Do you have hope and that somehow you can deter Russia? First the combat, and then what you're hearing from friends and their fears.
So as for the combat, our armed forces are doing an incredible job. We're facing the largest military force on the continent. And definitely the idea was that it was to be a blitzkrieg, just like Hitler did. But it didn't fall through because our armed forces, consisting of the people that are protecting the soil, of the people that have experience in fighting on the Donbass and Luhansk area, they have a lot of power to stop the aggressor. And they did so. We do see combat evolving on the south of Ukraine. We see combat, of course, on the Donbass and Luhansk area. And the aggressor is trying to take Kiev, which we're currently in. And these attempts have been absolutely lackluster for the last couple of days. We see a lot of reports that are coming in just outside Kiev, where there's an airfield that was bombed many times, and multiple, I don't know what you would call them, multiple insurgents would, come on helicopters trying to land into the area. And all of those forces were stopped by our armed forces. And it's tremendous, actually. So, on one hand, you have a lot of reports coming in and a lot of disinformation actually there from Russian-backed channels. But the truth is, you're hearing that a lot of attacks are happening. Russians are trying to go ahead. But then on the other hand, you see that their efforts are fruitless, that they're being stopped in its tracks by the armed forces of our country.
You sound proud.
I do. I am, actually. I have full hope and not as much hope, but I have confidence that Ukraine is able to deter current Russia as they are currently approaching. But given that we're dealing with somebody that's clearly not in his mind, we need support from our allies. We are ready to fight on our streets. We have a lot of people that are just volunteering. We have queues in the points where people are volunteering just to defend the big cities. And there are tens of thousands of them. So we are ready if Russia would break through and go into the capital, which is actually their plan, to denounce the president with their own president and say that, he agrees with everything that Russia wants, but are people ready to fight? So I have extreme confidence in what our guys are able to do, our troops. But we do need help from our allies because nobody knows how far this will go. And Putin has shown, time over time, that this is not something that he will stop on. This is not just Ukraine he wants. He wants everything.
And even though there were all these warnings and threats that Putin would invade, were people still surprised when it happened?
People were hearing about the possibility of attack for so many times that I believe that understanding of threat has faded a bit up until the moment that the bombs hit. So everybody was trying to lead their normal lives. Everybody was saying, have you heard that they're going to attack us in some time? Yeah, well, they've said it before, but nobody was prepared that actually bombs would start raining down on Kiev. People were under impression that if the attack was to come through, it would go only to Donbass area. But when civilians were targeted, when there were, like, within the first attack, a civilian, a 14-year-old boy, was killed on the west of Ukraine. And of course, armed forces objects were bombarded in Kiev and in other big cities. Everybody understood that, this is very much a threat, and people started to evacuate in the middle of the night.
What would you like the West to know about Ukraine right now?
That even though we are holding on, we're holding as much as we can, and we will do so, we need full support from the West to understand that this is not a local crisis. This is not, I saw this dubbed as a Ukrainian crisis. This is not a Ukrainian crisis. This is an attack on the world itself and on Europe itself. The aggressor has taken hold of Chernobyl nuclear plant. And this should be an obvious threat to the world that this will not end here in Ukraine. West is dealing with a madman that cannot be appeased just by giving him the Ukraine.
Sergei, thank you for sharing your experience and your thoughts, and our thoughts are with you. We will continue to work to get your story out.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you so much.